Prime Minister Anthony Albanese set to launch an inquiry into the actions of his predecessor Scott Morrison over taking on co-minister roles after a critical assessment by the Solicitor General. Things are getting back to normal with profit season showing that people are returning to pubs and shopping centres, and the ultimate meme stock, Bed Bath & Beyond, tumbles 60% in 3 trading sessions. It's Wednesday, the 24th of August, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. You sound pretty excited today.
I am, actually. The reason was, the whole time I was thinking, is there something special about the date today that Sean's going to bring up? I was trying to preempt it and I can't find anything. So I'm assuming that it's just a regular old date today.
240822. A lot of even numbers. I like that part of it. And 2 times 4 goes into 8.
Immediately after the show, stick around. We've got a great chat coming up today with a company that actually reported yesterday, Andrew Alcock, the CEO of Hub24.
Yes, very frank discussion about what Hub24 does. It basically provides a lot of the back-end service for financial planners. What's happening in that sector, what needs to be done, how it's changing. Really, really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's coming up a little bit later on. But the main story this morning, Sean, we're heading for an inquiry into former Prime Minister Scott Morrison's decision to take on shadow roles as Co-Minister for Treasury, Finance, Resources, Home Affairs and Health. It's really quite a list, isn't it?
It is a list. Legal advice from the Solicitor General, Stephen Donoghue, found that the former Prime Minister was validly appointed, there was no breach of the Constitution, and he did not act unlawfully. But he also found that the principles of responsible government were fundamentally undermined. He said Parliament was unable to hold a minister accountable for their responsibilities if its members were not aware who the minister was. Fair enough. Following the advice, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Cabinet will decide on the nature of the inquiry when Parliament sits again in September. He also said the advice made it clear Governor-General David Hurley acted on the advice of the government of the day. Therefore, he's in the clear. Mr Albanese says his predecessor owes all Australians an apology for undermining parliamentary democracy.
All right, that's what the Prime Minister says. What about the other parties? What do the others have to say?
The Greens want Anthony Albanese's promised inquiry into Scott Morrison's secret ministries to have the power of a royal commission, including to compel the production of documents and appearance of witnesses. That would be really interesting, though I'm not sure there's a great use of taxpayers' money. Liberals Deputy Leader Susan Lee said her party agrees with the Solicitor General's findings regarding Mr Morrison's secret appointments, and the coalition has indicated it will work with government. Clearly, Mr Morrison is losing friends amongst the coalition. Scott Morrison jumped on the advice to say nothing was illegal and the circumstances were extraordinary. He also said he would cooperate with any genuine process. It was a fairly humbling day, all in all, for the former Prime Minister, even if he didn't want to admit it.
Yeah, big day in politics. So how about local markets? What happened yesterday?
It's a pretty big day in local markets too. The S&P ASX 200 finished the day down 1.2%, back below 7,000 points. It ended at 6,962 points. Michael, I'm going to repeat what I said yesterday. There was a sea of red ink across the bourse.
Oh, no. You know what? No. We need to come up with something new. An ocean of burgundy or something like that.
Ooh, an ocean of burgundy, righto. That'll do.
It doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but let's roll with it.
The banks got sold off hard with all 4 majors down around 2%. Macquarie lost more than 3%. The retailers fell even harder. Coles fell 3.4%. Woolies was off nearly 3%. Wesfarmers was down 2%. Standouts were the energy companies with Woodside and Santos both up around 2%. BHP was also higher, as was Newcrest Mining. Just before we leave local markets, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission Chair Joseph Longo yesterday said the corporate regulator will focus on protecting consumers. Well, that's its role. But he outlined plans to target greenwashing, that's in the ESG space, financial product disclosures, and crypto assets. They're his main priorities in the year ahead. Sounds a little bit like Jim Chalmers, the treasurer from the day before, at least when it comes to crypto assets. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny in that sector.
Yeah, they sure will. What about international markets?
Wall Street struggled in recent sessions, and yesterday both the S&P 500 and tech-heavy Nasdaq closed down around 2%. Brent crude is back up a bit. That explains why the energy companies did a bit better yesterday. It's trading at $97 a barrel. Gold is back under $1,740 an ounce. And the Aussie dollar isn't going anywhere. Well, it is going. It's going down, really. It's fetching about 68.6 US cents. Hasn't got a lot of friends at the moment.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Australia's Environment Minister has rejected a request to block the construction of a $4.5 billion fertiliser plant after consulting with traditional owners about its potential impact on ancient Indigenous rock art.
It's the first big test for Tanya Plibersek, and she has sided with the arguments of the local Indigenous representative group to proceed with the Perdaman chemicals and fertilisers development. Now, the Burrup Peninsula, which is where the development is on, has more than 1 million rock carvings, some more than 40,000 years old. It's been nominated for a UNESCO World Heritage listing. Those sites lie near an industrial area where there are already 2 liquefied natural gas plants and 2 fertiliser plants. Ms. Plibersek said she had decided not to ban construction as the local Aboriginal group was the most representative organisation for the 5 traditional owner groups in the area.
Okay, now I mentioned this one at the top of the show, Sean. People returning to the pub post-lockdowns has helped deliver an 11% jump in earnings for Endeavour Group, which is the owner of 344 pubs, Dan Murphy's and BWS. I think you've probably done your bit to help Endeavour as well, haven't you?
Just a touch. Certainly during lockdown.
I think we all have. We've done our bit for the country.
Look, pub earnings are really good and they're getting even better. But the liquor outlets have been really disappointing, and Endeavour's share price actually ended the day down 12% yesterday. It was the worst of the top 200. Endeavour split from Woolworths last year, and the bottle shops had a great second half of 2021 as people stuck at home in Sydney and Melbourne particularly went online and, well, drank more. This year, though, they've gone back to the pub and the group's 12,400 poker machines, and that's continued into this new financial year, the group said.
So was there any info about kind of what people are actually drinking more of?
Oh, such a Michael question.
Oh, I'm curious. I know, you know what? I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone. We all want to know what everyone else is drinking.
Well, Chief Executive Steve Donohue said there's a trend towards discovering new drinks. I wasn't quite sure what he meant, but then if you look into the detail, there's strong sales of spirits, ready-to-drink pre-mixed beverages, alcoholic seltzers. I have never had one of those.
Don't bother. Sorry, carry on.
And a bunch of no-alcohol beer and wines. I certainly haven't had any of those.
All right, we might move on from that one, Sean. Another company that's in a totally different industry that's been knocked around by COVID is medical gloves and surgical suit maker Ansell.
COVID was very kind to Ansell with sales surging, but the downturn post-COVID has been hardly less substantial, and demand for personal protective equipment has tumbled. Not helping was that governments, health authorities and hospitals had built up extra stocks at the peak of the pandemic and are now delaying further purchases. Earnings at Ansell fell by a third last financial year. Its share price, however, jumped 10%. Now, Ansell at one point in mid-pandemic traded at more than $42 a share. It fell to half that $21 a share a couple of months ago. It's now back up to $27.30.
Sean, the Queensland inquiry into the Star Entertainment Group got underway yesterday and heard that allegedly the group helped high rollers gamble $55 million through a controversial Chinese credit card scheme.
The inquiry in front of former Court of Appeal Judge Robert Gottison QC was told that 1,168 payments were allegedly disguised as hotel expenses. It all sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? Certainly something similar to the allegations made in the New South Wales inquiry into the Star. The Queensland inquiry was also told that as late as 2019, Star was encouraging gamblers banned by the New South Wales Police Commissioner from its Sydney complex to head north to either Brisbane or the Sunshine Coast, where Star has casinos. And that's just day one, Michael.
Yeah, I look forward to many, many, many more stories coming out of this one. Sean, mining giant South32 has given up trying to win approval for an extension of its coking coal mine south of Sydney, and that then has major ramifications for another big company, BlueScope.
You might remember that debate a couple of years ago when South32 asked the New South Wales government for permission to extend the life of the Dendrobium coal mines out to 2048. Now, those mines are in the Illawarra region, south of Sydney. That request was rejected, putting at risk the Port Kembla Steelworks, which are owned by BlueScope and employ many, many people. South32 tried again, wanting an extension to 2041. It won some support from the state government, but now South32 has pretty much decided to give up on the mine, and it's likely to close sometime later this decade. That provides a major headache for BlueScope. It can import coal, but suddenly that becomes much, much more expensive, and it actually puts the steelworks and all the people with the jobs there at risk.
Scentre Group, which owns the Westfield malls across Australia, says customers are back and foot traffic is growing. Good news.
It is good news. Customer visits were up more than 5% in the first 6 months of this year, despite the outbreak of Omicron. So far in 2022, Scentre Properties have had about 277 million customer visits, and it expects to hit 500 million for the full year. According to Scentre, specialty tenants are doing particularly well. For the June half year, Scentre made an operating profit of nearly $550 million, and portfolio occupancy rose to 98.8%. That sent its share price up more than 2% yesterday, among the best of the top 200. And Michael, before I leave this story, I need to do a mea culpa. In a broadcast last week, I said another group owned Australia's Westfield malls. Not sure where that one came from, and thank you to the listener who pointed it out, but I was 100% wrong. Scentre owns them.
That's very honourable of you, Sean. If it was me, just deny.
It's taken me a few days. Just keep that in mind.
All right, now PwC has retained its spot as Australia's largest consultant, with revenue hitting $2.8 billion last financial year.
It's a lot of consulting, $2.8 billion.
Sure is.
Behind PwC's Deloitte, it earned $2.5 billion in revenue, then EY at $2.4 billion and KPMG at $2.2 billion. We don't talk about these big financial service and consultant firms, but they employ a lot of people and are really, really big businesses.
They certainly are. And of course, Sean, you're always going to work this one in today, because this is one of your favourite companies, appliance maker Breville. Always been one of your favourites just because you basically tantalise us with the toasted sandwich combination that you make. Now it's posted a record revenue. Before we get to the record revenue, what's the sandwich again?
Well, it's ham and cheese, but really it's salami and cheese with chutney.
It's the chutney. It's the chutney that makes it a little bit unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love the idea of an Aussie manufacturer selling coffee makers to Italians.
I love that too, actually. That is very, very good.
Yeah, most of the manufacturing at Breville is actually done in China, but the design is local, and it's been a real success story. It's gone out into the world, and yesterday it announced a 20% jump in revenue to a record $1.4 billion, a 16% jump in net profit. Got to be happy with that, surely.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a global company now. In fact, it's doubled in size over the past 4 years. Its business in North America is doing really well. Europe's slackening just a bit, and its share price closed flat yesterday, but that actually, given the market was down 1%, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. All right, moving on to overseas news now. And former President Donald Trump had at least 300 classified documents at his Florida home, really kind of raising questions about why he had them.
The initial raid in January this year uncovered 150 documents and triggered an investigation that led FBI agents to raid Mar-a-Lago earlier this month. In total, more than 300 documents with classified markings have been recovered from Mr. Trump since he left office last year, according to Associated Press. The documents should have been left when Mr. Trump lost the last election. It's not really clear whether the former president and his aides haven't been forthcoming about why they still have them, or potentially just haven't followed a process and they've ended up with Mr. Trump.
All right, one last one. Mentioned this at the top of the show as well, Sean. An interesting one. Bed Bath & Beyond has become the ultimate meme stock, with retailers ploughing in on the back of recommendations from bulletin boards, but its share price is now down 60% over the last 3 days.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about how meme stocks like Bed Bath & Beyond and AMC were back in fashion. That's now unwinding. In Bed Bath & Beyond's case, there have been reports of suppliers holding back on shipments because the retailer has fallen behind on payments. More significantly, the company's top investor, Ryan Cohen, last week said he was selling out. Now, Mr. Cohen is an activist investor. He has made about $68 million in profit from jumping into and out of Bed Bath and Beyond. Now, his sale late last week triggered the stock's biggest one-day decline ever. The moral of the story? Day traders beware. There is no easy way to make money on the share market. And Michael, finally, good luck to Anthony Fauci. We talked a lot about him last year. He's the man who's advised presidents in the US about diseases, including COVID, for more than 40 years. He's just announced his retirement. He's currently President Joe Biden's chief medical advisor. Of course, he was front and centre during the pandemic, much to the chagrin of Donald Trump. Well, actually, he started front and he kind of ended up back.
Somewhere towards the back, yes.
Yeah, that's right. But good luck to him. He's been an incredible public servant for many, many decades.
Yeah, well said. All right, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Andrew Alcock, the boss of Hub24.
That's right. A true believer in financial advice, which of course, Fear and Greed, we're always saying go and get professional financial advice. Hub24 provides a lot of the really hard stuff for financial advisors, all the back-end things, making sure that they can access different products, create reports for customers, things like that. And Andrew has a great knowledge on the sector. Fantastic chat.
Yeah, it's a great one. Up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 24th of August, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And why not have a go at listening to us through your smart speaker as well? Just say, play the Fear and Greed podcast, and it should start playing. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.